take it under. I'm on stage with my man Stevie Wonder. This is how it is, Southside 87. On stage with Jennifer Hudson and John Legend. This is how it be in the center. Obama Center. It's colder than winter. So beautiful. So beautiful. What I can do, check it out. It's usual. Usual like common for me and you. This is the type of thing that we can do. Like you too, just like Bono. We came to rock and hit live in Chicago. Yo, it's like this. We got the dream. On stage with Bruce Springsteen. How can it be things can get better? Thank God I'm here with Eddie Vedder. We get it all together. We can storm. Constant show, you know the whole form. When it goes on, it keeps going on and on. Yo, I can keep lighting. They can say respect to Joe Biden, President Biden, and Coach Bush. This is how we do. Yo, Operation Push. As I push on down, I'ma keep jamming. Respect to who? Fred Hampton, and of course, all my people here in Washington. You know how we do. We all equal. Saying the thing. This is like this Dr. King. We did it like this. Compton, we don't need no drama. Respect to Obama and Michelle. This is how we dwell. You can tell. Check it out. Never fail. This is like this when I come down, y'all. I can stay. Yo, we can stand tall. Yo, this is like this shot town. We gon' take you, Stevie, to higher ground.
No drama, Obama. My man, Common. When you freestyle, you can't, since you didn't compose, it's got to come from your subconscious.
Oh my God.
After he ran out of name checks, he jumped on Fred Hampton, Harold Washington.
I said, I knew immediately when he had to bring John Legend in and the rhythm was off. I said, oh, he's off the dome. Like it wasn't, the rhythm wasn't. Yeah. I said, oh, okay, he's doing this off the dome. Okay, didn't know that they were going to throw the mic to him because Stevie just brought everybody out. He was like, Jennifer Hudson, everybody. And they were like, oh, we're going to come to the stage. Okay, let's. Okay,
that point, you gotta. What you do is who you are. You ain't got time to rehearse.
Nope. But that's good. That's good. Fred Hampton and push.
It was a quite turn. In fact, Jeremiah Wright tells this story often when he refers to his former congregant, and Common's mother, who of course ran a public school in Chicago on the South Side. He said Common would come to church. Then everybody want him to perform. So after I finished in the choir singing, he said, we're going to bring up Common Rap. He would basically take what he heard in my sermon and turn it into a hip hop song. And it was amazing how brilliant he could just absorb all that. And I was particularly moved as the 44th president mentioned being married at Trinity United Church of Christ before he went over to Southside Community Center for the reception. He mentioned in his speech as well. So I'm glad that Reverend Wright got a moment and a name check. Wait. Right. But anyway, Reverend Wright did, but he always would talk about how Common would come and do that. So I think that was a little bit of the spirit of Reverend Wright. And then at the end, of course, no drama. Check out Obama. And then to Michelle, not Barack, but no drama, Obama. I think if you had to have one phrase, that perfectly summarizes the opening of the Barack Obama Center. Y'all don't get mad. Buckle up.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, before I say good morning. Good morning, good everything.
Good everything to everyone. That's
hello,
right.
Thank you. Welcome. Episode 328 and counting of In Class with Carr. We are here. As somebody that has put eyes on the center, I will say it is incredible. It is it's beautiful. It's thought out. It has all of the things. And in juxtaposition of this current regime, it also harkens to what was possible, what we could have built upon, what we could have actually taken with all of its imperfections and actually had a nation that that wouldn't be this. So I think, more than anything, after going through every piece of that building and then the structure outside, which is also incredible, and how it ties in, and you could see everything from the top. I left there feeling like we had an opportunity for those 8 years.
Oh, you had a chance to go in?
Oh, yeah. Kim Delaney. Shout out to Professor Delaney.
Yeah. Kim has been saying, I'm glad she did that. Excellent.
She made sure, if I'm going to be in Chicago, I actually crashed Trinity went there with unannounced and wanted to see for myself. I wanted to step on the steps, the places where Jeremiah Wright preached and where Otis Moss III is on Sundays. I came in there first, and they were cleaning. And they were
yeah, you said that.
yeah, they were in there cleaning when I got there, and that was also kind of like the blackest church. It's like, Jesus is black, oh man, I loved it. And then I had passed by the center, because it's like you can't really miss it if you're in that area. And you look up, and I'm taking video. I'm like, are those words? So then Kim, the lady, was like, I can get you in. I was like, word, okay.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, now Marcus gave us a tour, and it was beautiful. It was just beautiful, but also a lot of people left there feeling very like, how did we get to this madness that we're in now? Like, we got this as a president. And we were talking a little bit before we came on today, because Roderick Morrow, like, we were, it's Foolishness Friday, so we're toying with the notion that if somebody gonna run for president, Roderick said, your campaign should be shit. Why not? It's like anybody could be president, and this is kind of where we are. And I've been really thinking about, like, what kind of president do we deserve, or do we even need a president? Like, at this point, what is a president actually doing? As this fool is over there at the Versailles, at Versailles, France is setting them up. He don't even know history. You decided something, and nobody on your team knows enough to know that is not just symbolic. They're playing in your face as you're signing your childhood signature in the Versailles.
Actually, since they have many Nazis in their administration, I think not only were they perfectly comfortable to be at Versailles, they would prefer to be at Versailles. Remember, there was the humiliation of Hitler that led to World War II. So I in fact, while they thought they were playing a joke on him, them Nazis around him was like, oh yeah, Versailles? Oh, no question. We wouldn't have dreamed that you'd be stupid enough to take us to Versailles. But anyway, I'm just, I don't know. Anyway, I'm just thinking, that's why we can't. Anyway.
No,
we're not. No, I'm saying amnesia always plays into the strategy of those who want to oppress it. Because to look at anything we're looking at now as if this is new always works in favor of those who are trying to oppress us. These are the exact same people. A little bit different technology, sure, some historical events have changed, but in terms of their thrust and their desire, and for anyone who, calls ourselves a believer in a faith tradition, whether it be Islam, whether it be Judaism, whether it be Christianity, let me take Judaism out of it, because at the center of Judaism is remembering. Even if it's a false memory, they're going to remember everything. Passover, oh yeah, they tried to kill us. We survived, let's eat. In other words, there's never going to be a time. But for the Christians and the Muslims, no, let me take Islam out of it as well. 2% Muslims in Texas. And these white nationalists have organized their white nationalist party, the Republican Party, to be so they're going to put Sharia law. First of all, spell it, you stupid hillbilly. And you got Muslims. I just read the Texas Monthly, long article. There are Muslims in the Republican Party because they believe in small government and it's deluding themselves. They just got almost ran out of the Texas State Republican Convention in Houston last week because these hillbillies are looking at them like, you need to lead the country. He said, what do you mean? So anyway, so I'm going to take Islam out of it as well, because they are very heavily anchored in memory. I'm going to put square front and center. If you get offended, I love it, because we're in the 2-week quarter now. We're going to dance these next 2 weeks. I'm going to put the Christians in the crosshair, because Christianity, if nothing else, is steeped in amnesia. Now, Africans do the best we can. We love that Old Testament, and I think that's because there's a visceral connect with, oh yeah, you got us, we're going to get our lick back. But in terms of the history, nah. And so this is a question of amnesia. These Europeans running around here on commercial news, entertainment media, making fun of Trump for being at Versailles, and then forgot that in the previous segment, they called Stephen Miller a Nazi. You can't even remember the segment before. Yeah, okay. I mean, except this time they're going to win. They're going to win World War II this time. They ain't going to make the same mistake they make in their mind. So go to Versailles. Oh, yeah. Now we go to part 2. And this time we know we did the last time. We're going to win this time. Anyway, we'll see.
So, but, I had a couple questions as we, mark the celebrations, all the celebrations. It's been, and it's interesting, 160 years here, there's 250 years there, there's, all of this remembrance with no no connection to remembering. And I I was wondering how our ancestors marked time. How did they remember all of the things to remember? And we're talking thousands of years. And I'll never forget the clock that broke down for us. That
Yeah.
remember which episode when you first
What are
did
you
it.
called? Yeah.
I sat up and I was like, yeah, we're like 10 minutes into humanity when there's like hours and hours of time that has already passed. How did our ancestors remember all that aside from the names, right? Because the names connected you to your lineage, right? So everybody got an extra name that you can go back. How did they mark time? Because I don't imagine that they did, this the 250th anniversary of this. It was the 100th anniversary because time was different too.
Mm-hmm.
So and when we think about like who they put up as avatars, like Socrates, who went to Africa to get that philosophy, but we don't know who he went to because it was just an African way of knowing that he brought back, and then they stick Socrates and Plato and give us these people to remember, and then give them backstories and that aren't true. So how did they remember or mark
I
time?
think memory is, well, we talked about when you look at a governance formation, who we are to each other and what's the purpose, you pass memory on the ear. When writing was developed, and we as Africans created the first writing systems, that is to mark as well collective memory, but it operates at a different valence, I think, in terms of social class. You read stuff like Leonard Lesko, Pharaoh's People, and Mario's talked about this a lot. We don't know who could and couldn't write in ancient Egypt. The assumption is that only the elites, so to speak, the royalty and the administrative class, the priests and the scribes could write. But we absolutely don't know that. After all that monumental building and all that chiseling in of Meta Nature, those people were not in the Pharaoh's house and they weren't scribes. These are workers. And so they had to know what they were writing. When you go to Set Ma'at, the workers' village that has been preserved, you understand they could write. So we don't know. But when you're writing, you are preserving something, a narrative, a way of looking, a way of knowing, and you're passing it on by having it preserved in the material world. But when you are living life, just like all of us, the thing that you pass on is the thing that you have lived and the thing that you remember through direct experience, augmented. You're surrounded by writing, surrounded by learning in those formats. So most societies, let's say we talk about Gutenberg and Europeans, which is kind of funny because, again, anyway, we talk about that because that's about technology.
Right.
We were writing long before that. But when you live in a society where you are expecting the next generation to replace you, to take the jobs that you are doing now, then from the time they are born to the time they reach maturity and go through a rites of passage where they demonstrate they are now capable of taking the next step in replacing you, you are preparing them through education. So the question of time then becomes less about a date that exists outside of your experience and more about, are you now ready to take the next step? You've mastered this. Now let me give you this. You've mastered this. Let me give you this. We understand who you are in terms of your personality. We also understand who you are based on who you are showing up as. That reminds us of somebody who came before you. And as we're doing this with you, we are reminding you of who your grandmother is, who your mother and father are, who your great-great-grand. We're pouring this into you. You're not studying it in a book. You're studying it in the lives, and we're telling you this. We're giving you names which recognize this. We're giving you duties that recognize this. So if someone said, for example, oh, Mansa Musa, 14th century, what does that mean? My name is Shanice. I am the daughter of. So what is this 1322? I saw it perfectly in one night. We were in Philadelphia, North Philly, maybe our third or fourth year of Philadelphia Freedom Schools. We were at Benjamin Franklin High School. And the students were going around saying, so we were saying, far back in your family history can you go? And so they were talking, this is my mother, my father, my grandmother, my grandfather. And so many of the Africans from Philly, that's as far as they could go. And they could say, oh, I think we from so-and-so. Usually it was down south. And they might say it's North Carolina. And then we got to little Sadia Abari. Sadia Abari, who was born and raised in DC and Philly, her parents are Ghanaian. In fact, Abu Abari, her father, was one of my teachers at Temple. When Sadia got past like generation 9, it was like, And then she just kept going. Why? Because in my society, I know as I come of age, they got to tell, I will never meet all these people in this bloodline other than my parents and maybe grandparents and maybe great grandparents if I'm lucky. But I know the rest of them people because they prepared me because I'm the next one. So in terms of time, it's not that none of those dates are meaningless. But when you go to Egypt, as we'll be back there, in August, you won't see dates on the walls. You'll see relationships on the walls. So to date that stuff, that's why Manetho, who translated the dynasties for the Greeks and upon whom most people still rely on for their dating of the pharaohs, Old Kingdom, New Kingdom, where's Tutankhamun, where's Hatshepsut. It took Manetho because the Greeks came in there like, okay, how, what? He said, okay, let me write this down for you. But for most people, we don't need that. It's here. Just like you don't need it to talk about your parents or their parents. You don't need no dates. Anyway.
Which means that the people that created this current system that we're in so much more diabolical because they knew the one thing that they needed to disconnect us from was that lineage, was that remember.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They knew they had to beat Kunta Kinte into Toby.
Absolutely.
They knew they had to do that because they studied what's the source code of this power that we're trying to extract, and then how do we subjugate these people when their tie is so much deeper than ours. And then we got to build monuments and duplicate or imitate. We have to try to imitate this because there's power in that obelisk. There's power in the way in which these cities are designed. There's power in this Quran that I have Thomas Jefferson from. There's power in these people. So how do we get these people who are the source code to all things to do what we want them to do? We got to take away their connection to all that they have ever been. And then we're spending the next couple of 100 years trying to figure out our connection to each other. When it was already there, we didn't have to manufacture it. That's diabolical. When you think about it, it's
diabolical. It is genius. And as we think about this in terms of working people, we often think of it as, they did this to us. Yeah, they did, but they did it to themselves first in terms of class. In other words, the peasantry, the poor, there's no time for them. They labor, they go, man, this dating, and I'm not saying, I don't reject dating, of course, but, when I think of when the Nation of Islam had that song in the 50s, white man heaven is a black man's hell, Farrakhan had that line in it, to sell a man as merchandise on his body for the price. You wanted to reduce us to property. In order to do that, you have to take, as you say, you have to take our memories. You have to take our humanity. Our memory is our humanity, which is why I wince when I see us still being Africans, but being Africans with no memory. And it's like, okay, I see the movements, I hear the genius, but I don't hear it connected to memory. So as a result, which is why, again, when Common was performing, after he ran out of the name checks of the celebrities and stuff, he went to the thing that was deepest in him, the thing he has known the longest, and out came Fred Hampton. Came Harold Washington. Yeah, because so I'm saying all that to say that I was watching something. There was a lady somewhere, one of these social media sites, and she said, we must remember that the Africans who were held captive, I'm translating, she would have said slaves, but I don't use that language, except as a bridge to better language. So the Africans who were held captive weren't just property. They were capital assets. So in other words, a car is property parked in front of your house or your apartment or wherever. It's a capital asset when you get in it to drive Uber. You've actualized. He said these weren't things that were just sitting around. Their labor literally built the world system, as I would say. So what happens when you strip that capital asset of its memory? Because it's not material property. It's a human being. Well, at that point, you not only strip it of its being, you insert your memories. And so what you've done is upgrade your capital asset. Because if a computer was a living thing, it wouldn't work 24 hours a day. It would get tired and say, I didn't want to do that. Now, of course, we holding our breath for AI because it's going to be a minute when AI decides that it doesn't want to do that. And then we all screwed. But anyway, the point is this. When you think about that, you strip us out, but you also then put your memories in our heads. This is Ngugi Wathiango talking about this. You put your memory in our head, and then when we open our mouth, even in our struggle, We start our memory in 1619. It's finished. We got you. Your capital asset will continue to improve me because your whole life, your whole being, your whole relationship, your whole concept of self is tied to my memories. So you can't even imagine living in a world with your fullness, because even when you go other places in the world, even when you think you're doing that, Nadia, how far can you go back? 10, 15 generations. How far can you go back? If I'm lucky, 16, 19, because that's when I came into existence. Am I not a man and a brother? Oh, shit. And the minute somebody try to take that from you, you will fight them to the
Yep.
death.
Yeah.
No question.
And it doesn't stop here, because if you were colonized on the continent, you had to go to school. You had to cut your hair. You had to go to school. You had to wear a uniform. You had to learn that same thing, and you get graded. You get A's and B's based on your mastery of what they've planted in you, right? And who wouldn't want to get an A? Because that's gold star for you. So the fight, and I'm saying this to say that the fight is so much deeper and harder, because for many of us, I just sat with Michael Harriot, who was homeschooled, and there's nothing but what you see in a Michael Harriot who didn't go to formal school until he was a teenager, basically. So his formative years weren't steeped in this notion, even though the books that he read, I'm sure, were Western or what have you. But his sensibilities weren't rooted in reward and punishment based on mastery of somebody else's narrative about you and the world around you. So he looks at everything through these different lenses, which I think is, I'm jealous. I'm jealous because I have to unlearn. I'm jealous. I have to unlearn all of this stuff. And as an adult, it's so hard because you get angry, because I see that with a lot of people. And I think this is the resistance that we have in this country across the board, right? This resistance with everything you've been taught pretty much has to be renegotiated and re-examined. But you don't want to do that. You rather be right in your wrongness. You rather sit in it and be, okay, I'm comfortable. I don't have to do anything. Because once I know what I know is wrong, I have to do something. And who wants to actually do something? And then now you feel dumb too. Who wants to feel dumb? So we go along with this line, and it's collective, right? So the fight is even deeper than our common humanity, and we got to get back to being human beings. It's millions, maybe billions of people who have to unlearn systems of ways of knowing of one another. We're talking about the Indians, right? I mean, how many people have been indoctrinated into this, right? The whole of India, 1 billion people learning English ways, British ways of knowing, right? If it's not the African, British, it's the French came in with that, right? So you're speaking the language. You have to fight to get your stuff back and to say your national language is not French or English. Like that's an edict that has to come down. That's recent. We're studying Kwame Nkrumah, who, it's like, my goodness. Whew.
Who came to Lincoln University as Francis Nkrumah, in part because of that Christian education, which he was one of only a handful in what was then the Gold Coast to even have access to it. So you absolutely, Ikwe Arma, who is not his age mate, but with some of the places that Nkrumah went, like Moda, the school in Ghana, where you could go to get that good Western education. Ikwe Arma, both his parents, as we know, were school teachers, but he was also, particularly through his mother's line, immersed in the governance formation, the ways of knowing, the cultural meaning making, and the movement and memory of the non-Europeanized Africans through his mother's line. But when he got to school and they put Shakespeare in his head and his mouth and all the rest of it, he was a very good student, but he also knew that, this is not where I start. I will master this. What do you call it? Chew, swallow, pass, forget. In other words, just go, this is the test. Chew, follow, and this is the process. And it took him to Groton in the United States, through Harvard. And he got back to Africa. He wanted to be a revolutionary. His story is well known. We read it in the Eloquence of the Scribes, and he still swing with both fists there in Popegine, Senegal, bringing people together to remember, because he said, this is the most deadly assault. I listened with great interest to that excellent conversation, obviously, that you you and Mike had. And when Mike was saying up until 11 years old, his mother would, not tell him what to think. She would expose him to everything, not just history, and build that inquiry. One of the genius, I think, one of the great talents of Brother Mike Harriet is the developed capacity to ask questions, to ask different questions. Now, I think, so when you read Black AF history, which of course he was writing as we were working here during COVID, and he was right here with us in and out and conversations and supporting Knarrative and Nubia and all that. Shout out to Mike and Karen. They were there in Tulsa with us. We were all together there in Tulsa. Think, Black AF history is written with the type of genius and kind of not only ability to ask questions, but steady refusal to accept narratives as they are given, that it becomes something that people can more easily digest as a point of entry, particularly since I think it is anchored in the intimate type of relationships that we started talking about a minute ago. So Mike he isn't starting with, Kemet. He isn't starting with Ghana, Amani, Songhai, or any of the governance formations that were pre-captivity. Those things make appearances in and out, but he's starting with my mother's teaching. He's starting with their house and all those books in the same room. He's starting with us running up and down in South Carolina. We jumped over a ditch, and then now me tie up the Underground Railroad in this. So what he's doing is activating and accessing the thing that is most familiar to us. In fact, I would call it the governance formation, who we are to each other. And who we are to each other is the intimate space. It's those corners. It's the bodega. It's the corner store that y'all ran. Your father. I mean, it's all of, I know that. Now, then we hit the wall, though. That's where the whole thing becomes very difficult. John Clark used to say this. He said, I would come to school. I would come into my class right there at Hunter College, where he taught for so many years. And the students I had, working class students, when I introduced something from that long memory, there was a tendency for them to viscerally reject it. They said, that can't be possible. Why? Because I would have heard that. Just like DeMario Solomon Simmons or our sister Tiffany Crutcher would say, nah, it couldn't have happened. Wall Street, now I'm from Greenwood. No, that didn't happen. So the problem then we have is not the points of entry. They're very familiar to us. The problem is linking those points of entry to the long memory.
Right.
And not only is it that couldn't have happened, people will hate you.
Yeah.
I watched the Obama Center every time I'm in and out of Chicago at least once a year, sometimes more. And so I watched it come out of the ground. So every time we was in fact camp, we would drive by there and say, take me by there. I want to see. Oh, okay. What is that going to be? It just looked like a big ass. Where is it come? And so the politics of why the University of Chicago doesn't appear to have wanted to have anything to do with it, but they're very happy that it's adjacent. Shout out to the white city at the University of Chicago. Y'all want to dance that dance. We can talk about that. Y'all love Obama, huh? Not enough to, but anyway, it's cool. But the point is this, watching it and thinking about it, and then realizing that the memory being curated is Black as hell in the very familiar and local sense, and ties to a long memory that is as non-African you can imagine. So the point is, did you get it? Had they? No, I don't know. Did you see the portrait that the sister did in Judaica at Queen Crosby?
I wasn't.
I figured they add that very late.
Yeah, no, that wasn't up yet. The dresses were there. No,
the dress. Okay. Yeah, but the words that Idris Khan. Again, you got these Africans, you got Muslims, you got a lot of people who went into this design. Those words that Idris Khan puts at that observation deck level, what is it, 7th or 8th floor? I'm not sure.
Top floor. I don't know. Yeah, the top floor, and they're 5-foot letters, 5-foot high letters, concrete letters that are so vast that you can, see through them at the top, and the ceiling. I mean, it's just.
Oh no, it's an architectural.
Oh my God, it's beautiful.
Beautiful. It's just a beautiful moment in terms of cultural meaning making. We would put architecture in there, and also science and technology. I think it's a brilliant rendering. I made all the more brilliant by the fact that, and this is ancillary, it isn't central, but we should mention it because I think this is where too many of us center, but we should mention it to acknowledge that we are aware that the white nationalists are driven crazy by it. Now we can finish talking about the important stuff, but those words are taken, of course, from the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday speech that he gave. And again, and this isn't a criticism, but as I'll talk about in a few minutes, I am one of the army of students of John Clark. And after he passed, I gave a talk. I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes, called Requiem for a Timekeeper. And one of the things that I said was, the timekeeper is not your friend. The timekeeper is the timekeeper. And so they used to get mad at Dr. Clark. He said, why y'all getting mad at me? I'm just telling you. Anyway, this isn't a criticism of what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it because if I'm going to be a good in terms of rites of passage timekeeper in the tradition of my teacher, then I have to do it. Otherwise, you want kiki? Yeah, go somewhere else, because my spirit is absolutely laughing all the time. But there's a certain thing. I'm looking at that like this is a brilliant rendering, and you got to make a choice. And Bloody Sunday is a choice, and it's an important moment in our history. Your daddy from Kenya, right? I know you didn't until just before he passed, this kind of thing. And there's a lot of Africans involved, and Africans from all over the world, and other people who built and put in this. This would never happen, but allow ourselves, since we're talking about dreaming and imagination and hope and all those beautiful things, imagine if he had, or if there had been some rendering of something that was written 3,000 years ago, before this democracy y'all claim y'all want that nobody ever had anywhere, including the Greeks. It's not going to happen. But I'm saying, if you would allow yourself to imagine it, one day it will be reconnected, because the wall we hit is the long memory wall, not the familiarity wall. We can sing, we can dance, we can dress, we can do all that. That's us. We black people. Now add your memory. I'm going to fight you. I'm fight you on that. Now, shit. I'm going to fight you.
Don't make me think too deeply.
Don't make me think, because that might lead me to actually being free. And I am a capital asset. I labor on behalf of this criminal enterprise. You know what I'm saying? I'm not property anymore. I'm a capital asset, though.
I'll say two things. Back to Michael Harriet, that he studied, and I've been thinking a lot about education. Both of us been in the classroom. You're still in it, and so many educators here. There was a point for me where I didn't know what I was teaching, because it didn't really exist in reality. And what was I sending these students out to do if they couldn't navigate a system that had changed so vastly that the things that I knew to teach them, which were right things, would not be applicable for them. So it was a real battle for me. But Mike Harriet and Bomani Jones both studied. People come out of homes of people that foisted upon them an education of self. Both studied economics. They didn't study history or English, or which I think is also interesting, because economics is this kind of it's different. It's not, you're not pursuing the lie per se, even though there's lies, I guess, in economics, but it's a different.
And economics is the grounding lie.
Grounding lie, right.
Adam Smith. But because it's a materialist rendering of the world, and that is the shift in ways of knowing that makes everything else possible. There are no capital assets if you don't have capitalism. And
but having that as a foundation for your education shifts you a little bit from the storytelling, and allowed you maybe to see the storytelling through a different lens if you are already imbued with this sense of self that maybe a Bomani or a Michael Harriet started with, right? But I'm also thinking about the bridges that we have to build to get people there, because if you're flooding them with, here's the truth, and they're not ready for it, they're going to regurgitate. It's like, I had an uncle who was an alcoholic, right? And he came and lived with us for a while, and and he didn't like to eat, and we went out to a restaurant and tried to get good food, and you know what he did? At the table, he threw up, right? Because his system needed the alcohol,
jacked up, no question.
So you would think good food, good healthy food would be good. No, it's not good for somebody who's been immersed in poison. And it was really, as a child, I couldn't understand, like, why wouldn't he just stop drinking, And I think in many ways, we're all kind of addicted to the lie, to the point where even good food, or, getting off the alcohol or the drugs, whatever the lie is, will make us sick. And nobody wants to be that. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Would it have been if y'all had kept feeding him that, And nobody, let me not say nobody, it would have been almost indescribably difficult for a 24-hour watch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? To do that,
Right.
because
Yeah.
we've all been through that.
He was sneaking. He would have alcohol when he moved out. We were in his bedroom. I was like, there were
What
so
the
many
hell?
bottles. I'm like, this man found so many crazy
Yeah,
ways to
no
have
question.
in the house. It was like
It's
crazy.
no question. So
But
I guess so. My question would be then: would his body have continued to reject it had y'all been able to keep that 24-hour watch?
of course, I think there's a process. I mean, people heal from alcoholism, from drug addiction all the time. There's like 12-step programs, right, that people go through, and then they may, relapse, whatever they call it,
But
because
not by yourself.
no,
Typically.
community is important, but most of us are not in community.
Well, that's we're
Right, that's what we're
in the
doing.
same place. That's exactly right.
Right.
We can't.
So yes,
My father drank heavily. My father, which is another reason why he is, my hero. My father drank. He worked every day of his life. I don't care what he had been doing the day before, and he never drank during the week. It was usually the weekend, and he'd be working, clean up the house while he drinking. Then,
it was,
what I'm saying? Like, what the hell? My father worked. Hayward Carr was a monster. He would do that, and never violent. Never ain't. In fact, my father would get intellectual when he drank. I'm convinced that, in my DNA, whatever part of, where I moved through the world DNA, that part came from my father. My father, in a different world, my father been white, he'd have been a college professor or somewhere, researcher. But that alcohol brought that desire out. He would always want to debate you. And anyway, I still like to say this. At some point, it was too much. He quit. He quit cold turkey. And it wasn't because, and he never took a drink again the rest of his life. I guess I was probably in my maybe preteen, 13, 14 years old. So I'm saying I have to say that the community that surrounded him, the church, his friends, the women and men, the black people working at the VA, where he worked, all those people, the veterans, his family, his siblings, that community never intervened directly, to my knowledge. Well, I think about Brother Strange and Ms. Wright and all his friends at the VA. They may have had an intervention. To this day. I didn't know about it. And they're all ancestors now. I can't ask them. But I know that it was the community that gave him the surrounding, whether he said, I can't do this anymore because it's doing this here, it's doing this here. My mother, never violent, always loving, always together, but it was breaking her heart. And it didn't break her heart to the point where she got incapacitated. I knew my mother well enough to know that there were conversations she had with him that I'm sure had integrated in them, or you gotta stop. I already know that. I ain't gotta hear it. I didn't have to be in the room. So I'm saying I have to say that, Ray Charles, even as Jamie Foxx depicts him, but more better when you read Brother Ray with, David Ritz, the thing he co-wrote with David Ritz, in some ways, not every way, but in many ways like you, I'm coming to people who people know to help you tell a story that's going to help other people. So when David Ritz helps Ray Charles to tell that story, hey man, that shit was going to kill me, and it was killing my talent. And I'm saying at that moment, Ray Charles got the money to go somewhere where when he get ready to stick the needle in his arm, what just happened? Oh no, he got straps on you. So I'm saying your uncle, y'all couldn't, nobody has the material resources to strap him to a bed and make him eat them vegetables. You know what I'm saying? And so it wasn't a failure at all, just like it isn't a failure for the countless others for whom that is the case, including in my family. Oh my God. It wasn't my parents' generation as much as it was my cousin's generation. That thing, and it breaks your heart. And then some of them were veterans, Vietnam. You go back and you see what heroin did, what that whole barrage of the 60s and 70s. I'm saying that as a prelude to this. Metaphorically, our people are going to reject long memory. And then we have to have institutions that say, we're going to love you and we're going to allow you to call us everything but a child of God. And we're going to continue until your body level sets, your mind level sets. But if we turn it into, okay, I understand. Well, you go ahead. We're finished. That's what we end up.
I didn't bring it up for that. I brought it up to say.
No, I'm saying that's important for us to say, though. Yeah.
It is. But most people, my uncle died an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And most people do. Most
yes.
people never get off.
Absolutely.
Most people don't revert back. It's a rare thing that a Ray Charles or your dad can quit cold turkey and never look back. And I'm saying, as it relates to our common, yes, we have to stay in community. We have to be vigilant. but most people are going to fight it. And so I'm just saying that, you know, we have to leave space and build all of the bridges and be all of the things, but also recognize that, you know, some of this is going to be frustrating for those who are like, you know, it's going to be frustrating. And we're going to have to know that the addiction to whiteness, ignorance, it's an addiction, is prevalent, and it's deep. It's deep. And it's like you talk about coffee, you know, getting that first hit when you were little.
That's right.
To this day, you still, you know, that coffee still.
No, I quit.
Oh, you quit coffee? You quit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The day we left from Dulles to go to Kemet 3 years ago, decaf coffee in the airport, and I haven't had a cup of caffeinated coffee since then because I understood. Now, Sunyata Amin got this damn
what you
Elephant
got?
Walk purple tea.
Oh, Elephant Walk is
because
fire.
that's as close that caffeine. In fact, I got some in my niece's cup, North Carolina tea, Aggie Pride. But I'm just saying, I can't.
Elephant Walk is fire.
It's fire.
CalabashTea.com. That's my favorite to get it going in the morning.
Me too. But I can't have but one. I can't have but one sachet though.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you know, because it don't make your hand shake. But it's black tea.
It's in there.
It's in there. But no, I hadn't had any coffee since. I was a coffee addict.
It took you 50-something years, though.
Yes, it did. And it did. But you know what? But you know what? In that moment when I quit, you know who I thought about? My father.
See?
He did it. I could do it. And it ain't even alcohol. My father's drink was gin. My father drank gin. And I mean, but he stopped. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, but you had to have support. And I didn't keep it to myself either. That's the other thing the West does. It trains us to go through these journeys as individuals and take suffering and keeping it to yourself as some kind of point of pride. No, I told them all, beginning with Mario Valenti, hey man, I ain't drinking no more. I'm not going to drink no more caffeine. I'm not drinking no more coffee.
So that everybody's now participating in your.
Yes, everybody knows. They say, what is that? Oh, no, it's not. You got to do that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you don't have to do it, but it's easier. Stop this individual. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to just frame that. Even as we are here 328 consecutive Saturdays, each Saturday I pull a nugget out that changes and shifts something that I think, but I'm already open to being changed. I'm already open.
Well, all of us have to be.
Examine everything, but there's some of us that are so resistant, and to crack through that, you know, requires a level of patience and diligence that, you know, that we're just going to have to acquire, because we need more people to wake the hell up, because at this point, killing us. It's killing the world.
It's killing the world.
For the source code to forget itself. You know, we got to if we got to reset this thing, we don't even have a damn, you know, where's the button to push? It's us, right? So we have to get right so that the world can be right.
That's right. And I'm so glad that you told us. I hear the echo. Is it me? Oh, it is. I'm so glad you told us that you got a chance to stand and sit and think in the Barack and Michelle Obama Center, the Obama Presidential Center, because it is the most significant physical space devoted to the U.S. presidency, period. The 44th president, first quote unquote black president, is the only president represents to date the aspirations of African people within the criminal enterprise of the United States of America. I don't mean the aspirations of African people writ large. That is simply impossible. You cannot reconcile the memory and the aspirations of African people to any of the criminal enterprise colonies or former colonies of Europe. But if you're going to talk about the social structure of the United States of America, then you begin with Barack Obama. When it comes specifically to the presidency, the generosity, the determination to include everyone in terms of all human beings, even those you viscerally disagree with, that is an aspiration that's deeply rooted in Africana ways of knowing. It has no relationship with the lived historical experience of democracy, whatever the hell that is. It has everything to do with fighting democracy, quite frankly. Many of my friends who political scientists, philosophers might disagree with me, and I would say, get you a subscription if you don't already have it to Knarrative. Come in on Nubia on Monday nights and let's dance. Because I want to hear you defend your master. I want to hear you defend Plato. I'll pull my copy of Poetics and we can go verse for verse. You know, as KRS-One said, blow for blow, yo, you better act like you know. Some people take this word MC very lightly. They can't move a crowd, not even slightly. Tell you what the fact is. Let me tell you whose ass is the blackest. So if you want to come and dance with Aristotle, I'll pull my copy of Poetics. You want to pull who you want, John Locke, Rousseau, I got them all over here in one of these shelves. Some of them may be in storage. I'm going to have to go get them. So you may have to give me a week to reread, get my weight up a little bit. But I'm very happy to do that. Montesquieu, Spirit of the Laws. I want to run through this because I'm going to tell you right now, those that I didn't have to read when I was an undergraduate, I got introduced to very differently through the frame of another longtime resident of the South Side, Jacob Hudson Carruthers, whose initiation into elderhood was held at that same South Shore Community Center that Barack and Michelle Obama, after being married at Trinity United Church of Christ, had their wedding reception. So if you want to talk about the political scientists, I'll pull my copies of the Afrocentric World Review from the 70s when Jacob Carruthers and Harold Pates and Anderson Thompson, and Bob Starks, that whole crew out there on the south side of Chicago, Center for Inner City Studies, were grappling with those European philosophers and revealing not only their shortcomings, but how we cannot use them to ground any notion of community. But the Obama Presidential Center represents an aspiration to something that has its roots in something else. So it must be celebrated for that. This week's theme celebration, because we are now in the 2-week window. I've been telling y'all since January, we was coming here. That 2 weeks, that 15 days between Juneteenth and July 4th. Oh, we're going to have some fun this next couple of weeks. Maybe this is a moment where we push a little further. So in that regard, the aspiration is there. And the points of entry are absolutely there. You know, you see that beautiful painting of Michelle and Barack Obama in the Jacob and Yee Crosby painted, the sister. You see those words sculpted literally into the top of the building by Idris Khan. Just the video I've seen in the portraits I've seen, the still photography. You know, I can't wait to go in there. And thank you, Prof. I don't know whether they swore you out of secrecy or you were embargoed. I'm glad you mentioned it here so the world knows that you got a preview. The fact that there's not a scrap of paper from Obama's 8 years as president in that building, that it is not a presidential library, is something that deliberate choice, was made. And to think about that in the context of where we are in terms of memory, I think is fascinating to me. As we talked about on Monday night in office hours in Nubia, Elsie Abels writing in the Atlantic, not in the print edition. This was in the digital edition last week. He wrote an article and headline, Obama and Trump's presidential centers have one thing in common. Trump didn't have presidential center yet. He will certainly do what Obama did, and Obama wasn't the first one to do this. Make the resources that built the center completely private. So this is not a public or even a public-private venture. And she goes through the history of the presidential centers, Truman, FDR at Hyde Park, criminal courts in Missouri. If you go to the James Earl Carter Center, we've talked about some of them run by the National Archives, National Park Service, public dollars, others donations exclusively. And Obama's is a private, they set up a corporation, set up a foundation. And while you see it the way it is a tribute to what Obama represents. So the O in the middle of the floor, that whoever it was, David Plouffe, Axelrod, whoever the people, when they put the O and the red, white, and blue slash through and then had the poster with hope and all that. Yeah, that's all. It's aspirational. Obama himself, famously, one of his most famous, I think, quotes that, I'm a Rorschach's test. People project who they want me to be onto me. I think it's very astute political philosophy. And so there's that. But in terms of people going in there to do research on the presidency of Barack Obama, that is not that. The Barack Obama archive up the street from where I am right now at College Park, Maryland, at the National Archives. And even you're a scholar, your point of entry is digital. Not even a reading room, a dedicated reading room for that. So if you're going out to Chicago to do what you do in Austin, Texas at the LBJ library, they ain't got not a scrap of paper. In fact, the quote that Valerie Jarrett gave in the article that I'm mentioning was, quote, we would much rather have a branch of the Chicago Public Library on our site than filling it up with here's the quote, bunch of papers. Read that line. My first thought was, why can't you have both? That's not the trajectory. The idea is aspiration. The idea is collaboration. The folks from Chicago, all my friends from Chicago, the family, the Kim and all the people with the Comedic Institute and all the people will tell you that Jackson Park, part of a much larger expanse there, 500 plus acres of park connected there, south side Chicago, all of it on the south side. That little 19 acres that Obama has, that tip there next to the University of Chicago, doesn't stop Black people from enjoying the rest of the park. I mean, it's including the museums down there, the Field Museum in there, where Charles Carroll Grantham and so many others, Bob Ben Levy, Yosef Ben Levi, and Yvonne Jones, so many others, Ife Carruthers, they docent and they move back and forth. And so all that, and then into the grass where the people barbecue, the golf course is supposed to be redeveloped where Black people golf. You can still do all that. And I really want to, I'm not going to out her, but I am going to recognize out of respect the very important conversation we had Monday night with a sister who spent the better part of 4 decades as a librarian in CPS with Masters of Library Science. I won't say too much about it, but just know that this is a person who knows, who trained with some of the most significant and important librarians of African descent and scholars of African descent in the second half of the 20th century, coming into the 21st century. I'm gonna leave it at that. But she talked very powerfully about challenges she was having in grappling with this concept of the Obama Presidential Center in the place that it is, given that specific place in that larger expanse of those 500 plus acres, significance to people of African descent. And so the narrative that this is a place for everyone, I think is absolutely correct. I think the narrative that this is a place that will enhance the community is absolutely correct. Understanding that the vast south side stretches way down in the other direction, away from that beautiful building. And they're thinking about the fact that its address is Stony Island. When I think Stony Island, I think of 2 places immediately. I think of the Mosque Mariam, way south in Stony Island. That's where the Nation of Islam is. I saw Minister Farrakhan there at the unveiling. Of course, Minister Farrakhan now in his 90s, who lived around the corner from Barack Obama in Hyde Park. If you know that neighborhood, Elijah Muhammad's house was there, Farrakhan's there, Nation of Islam property there, Jesse Lewis Jackson house there. That is a place there. When we were in Tulsa, Greenwood, the brother who runs the largest equity formation here in the United States, run by a person owned and run by people of African descent, whose great-great-grandfather was run out of Tulsa. We talked about Brother Smitherman, about all of the entrepreneurs in Tulsa. He is one of those people, and we were talking about him a couple of weeks ago. Y'all go back and look at it in class. He said, I grew up in that neighborhood on Greenwood Street. So to see Minister Farrakhan there was like a homecoming. Wait, was Farrakhan? No. I mean, he's gotten to the age now where he probably doesn't travel as much, so I can understand politely declining the invitation to come. But when I think of Stony Island, I think of Mosque Mariam. And I think around catacorner to Mosque Mariam, the Southside Cultural Center there, I think of the Stony Island Arts Bank, which we talked about a little bit on Monday night in Nubia. The brother Theaster Gates, who I told the first time I met him, we were at the Schomburg. Shout out to Alex Mitchell, who used to work at the Schomburg, one of my former students who's now at the California African American Museum. I was talking with Alex yesterday, who, Philly girl, by the way, who, put together a conversation we had. Y'all can find it on the Schomburg's website out there. We were talking about the archive. And I told Theaster, I said, man, when I come to Chicago, I have 15 minutes at all. I go over to the Stony Island, to the Arts Bank, man, because you have preserved much of Mr. John Johnson's private library upstairs. You can just go in there. The sister was telling us on Monday, and I experienced that myself. Just look at the books. In fact, I go in there and I look at the books, and I'm trying to see the books I don't have, because most of the books that he has in there, I have. So, as a person who is a book person, I'm looking to see what in here I don't have and make a note of it, write it down, take a picture or whatever, and then I just keep going because I'm building my library too. And it's important to have those physical archives. You can't do that at the Obama Presidential Center. And I ain't mad, because it's a different vision. If you read Kelsey Abel's article, the idea that this is the center of the future. Paperless is how we going. Okay. Yeah, okay. No problem. Paperless is very, very convenient. When you need to grab something, and when they turn electricity off, what your ass gonna do? We're gonna keep going. As the months stretch out, the years stretch out, the big objective now is to, have physical space large enough to convene, because it's not in Chicago a presidential library. But that is deliberately not that. It's a presidential center. There is a branch of the Chicago Public Library there. And so I'm saying all that to say that this is the most significant center devoted to the presidency of the presidents that have come so far as it relates to African people. Now, I'm not going to say much more about it, because I'm very clear, as I said, and I mentioned a moment ago, Karen, we, when John Clark made transition in July 1998, that fall, we went to the ritual, Messenian church, funeral, and then he was interred at Gethsemane, ritual at Gethsemane Baptist Church in Columbus, Georgia, and then was interred there in Columbus, the cemetery where we have our regular rituals there in terms of moments of commemoration, moments of celebration, moments that mark time. We started having this conversation. But a few months later, in November 1998, I gave a talk, because I was thinking about this, and part of it was, I think it was probably part of the mourning process, the celebration process, the process of in real time getting out some of the things that are meant to us, certainly to me, and doing it in front of and with people who were his comrades. Dr. Ben was still around, Lynn Jeffries, Rosin Jeffries, so many others, many people who were around and close to him who are now ancestors. If I start naming them, it'll just be too many. Baba Bill Jones, Neptis, I think, Jake Carruthers, obviously, Man Sertimo was still around. I mean, so many people, being able to be in conversation with them, and then the people who are still with us, people like Kwaku Larry Crow, so important, Ben Levi and Reba Kelsey, whose birthday is coming up. Happy 101, Baba Reba. Next couple of days, 22nd of June. And thinking about this, and as I'm thinking about it, happy Father's Day to everyone out there. Nicola Nat, who has helped raise children and been pillars in society. Babas, be happy, because we know that's every day like Mother's Day. But I started, and so that November 1998, at the International Center in West Philadelphia, near the campus of the University of Pennsylvania, I gave a talk. The outline of a talk that I gave several more times before coming to Detroit in March 1999, which is also Mario Eddie Valethia Watkins Beatty's anniversary, because they got married that same weekend. They always laugh. They say our anniversary is always around the time of the ASCAC conference. Yeah, because y'all got married in Detroit, because that way people that had to pay twice come to Detroit for the ASCAC conference, but had a wedding before the conference started. So, but the talk I gave there in November in Philly that I gave a few more times before giving it finally one last time in a developed form in March 1999 in Detroit at Wayne State University. I'm at the Wayne State in a minute and pass. Requiem for a Timekeeper. Requiem for a Timekeeper, because John Henrik Clarke, the history, borrowing from, among others, Saunders Redding, who had to track that quote down. I'll never forget when I found it in a pamphlet I got it at a used bookstore in Nashville, Tennessee that isn't there anymore. And I was sitting at my mama's room table in Nashville reading through, and I saw the quote, there's Redding in it, the DNA of the quote that is attributed, at least so, to John Clarke, who expanded. He said history is a clock, which a people tell its particular, people tell their time of day, their political time of day, their historical time of day. He said it is a compass. It is a compass by which people find themselves on the map of human geography, of human history. And in fact, the title of the name of our journal in the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, I usually keep copies in here, but I think I might have consolidated and moved them all different places now. I don't see any copies of the compass here, but the name of our journal is The Compass because of John Clarke. But then Requiem for a Timekeeper, and y'all can find, actually, if you go on to, I think, my friend Jared Ball actually, I don't even know if Jared was Jared there? I don't think Jared was there. Somebody recorded the November 1998. It was 2 hours. And I went through the outline that I had started sketching that July and continued through the fall of the life of John Clarke and his connections. And so you can find it out there. If you type in Requiem for a Timekeeper, Greg Carr, and you put Jared's name, Jared Ball, I think it's on his digital platform. Anyway, you can find it. But then the March talk, March 1999. It's amazing how electronic, this is important to have this digital stuff. Somebody, I want to say it was Baba Kwesi Ohene, Abdullah Keel, who put it on his YouTube platform. He's now an ancestor, so I can't ask him. I imagine that Baba Mzee or Nachi Montgomery or some of the crew in Detroit would know. Y'all know, I know it's a lot of people who plug in here because, in many ways, this work we're doing is really, not in many ways, it's a direct extension of the Aztec study group model, which takes us all the way back to John Henrik Clarke and the Edward Blyden Society back in the 30s, the Harlem History Club. But I don't know who did it, but if you go to YouTube and type in Greg Carr, Requiem for a Timekeeper, or Greg Carr ASCAC 1999, you'll find it. Said my name more times in that last 30 seconds than I ever do. So you'll find it and you'll see me talking about it. But the reason I'm raising it is, particularly in that Detroit conversation, which was about an hour long, was one of the plenaries that year at ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. I hope y'all can recognize me. I was about 50 pounds ago in terms of weight, and my hair wasn't gray. I had the high top fade. That was the times. We live in the time. But 27 years ago, something to be. Actually, you just passed 27 years. One of the things I say in it is that, remember when John Clarke came out very critical of the Million Man March? And if you watch Wesley Snipes' documentary on John Clarke, Henry Clarke, A Great and Mighty Walk, you'll see Dr. Clarke say, yeah, the Million Man March, no, because Farrakhan going to lead y'all straight to Islam. Clarke was hardcore about certain things, and that was one of them. I was at the Million Man March. It was very transformative, very powerful. I'm glad I went, and it will always resonate with me. And I don't even think that I disagreed with Dr. Clarke in terms of perhaps the trajectory that the minister was on, but I do think that it was more complicated than that. But I raised it in those talks I gave, particularly the one in Detroit, because I said, John Henrik Clarke was a timekeeper. History is a clock. It's a clock by which people tell their political, their cultural, their intellectual time of day. It is a compass by which people find themselves on the map of human history. So if you've got a hold of the compass, or if you're the one who tells time, I'm going to fight the urge to go over here and get John Henrik Clarke's book, Who Betrayed the African World Revolution, where he opens with a poem Queen Mother Moore, Watchman, what's the hour of the night? Every time I hear Jimi Hendrix, All Along the Watchtower, the image comes in my mind of somebody who's on that wall looking at what's going on around, because people are asleep inside the wall. People are working inside the wall. People are making love inside the wall. People are fighting and arguing inside the wall, but none of them have the responsibility of being on the wall looking at what's going on. All along the watchtower, princes kept their view. Somebody got to be. The women came and went, barefoot virgins too. Outside in the cold distance, wildcat did growl. I gotta see what's coming. Two riders were approaching, and the wind began to howl. Now, every time I read that poem at the beginning of John Henry Clark's book, Who Betrayed the African Revolution, Watchman, what's the hour of the night? Think about Jimi Hendrix, All Along the Watchtower. You got somebody watching. I think about Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization, the chapter, A View from the Bridge. You're on the bridge, you can see what happened before, you see what's going on now, and you see what's going on. I'm no prophet, would never aspire to prophetic, but I am of the genealogy. I am of the lineage. I am a person full four square in the middle of the next generation that had been raised by the keepers. John Clark was a timekeeper, and as I said in Detroit 27 years ago, timekeeper not your friend. Now I would amend that to say the timekeeper can't be your friend. You be friendly. I mean, I love people, but the timekeeper primary job is to keep the time. So for me to acknowledge the complexity of our journey as African people, I got to do that with a smile, sometimes a tear, sometimes a little anger, but I got to do that. And so thinking about that in the context of the events that have happened in the last week since we were all together requires a kind of commitment, a raised commitment on the corrective pain of comment. Because watchkeepers ain't no watchkeeper because you say you're a watchkeeper. You got to get brought into that. Now, if you show up in it not having been brought into it, you could do that too, but it's kind of difficult. And you often know that whether you came into it directly or indirectly, when you convene with other watchkeepers, with other timekeepers, you can very clearly, very quickly understand who you with and what your responsibility is. Some people are timekeepers who don't care what people think one way or the other. I'm not one of those people, because community is what's going to get us out of this. And I know that everybody is for community, but I also know that there are certain temperaments. People have different temperaments, and it's important to acknowledge that. But, we are at the 160th anniversary of the celebration of Juneteenth. What yesterday, or that's what June the 19th was for those who were watching later. June 19th, 2026, this is the 160th celebration of Juneteenth, commemoration of Juneteenth. And there's a distinction there, perhaps even a difference, but they're important together. Because in 1865, as we know, Prof, as we were literally in Galveston, Texas, next to you last year on this day, standing under that hot sun there at the place where General Order number 3 is read consistently every year, and where they have the party jumps off after the Juneteenth parade. We were all there. You called it Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. We were all there. And there the previous day, we had a ritual led by Brother Daniel Black in the same waters where General Gordon Granger, who was the commander of the Union forces in the West in the District of Texas, sailed into Galveston Bay, standing there with, my brother-in-law, Randy Fuller, my sister, Gussie Carr Fuller, my nephew, Ellington Haskell Fuller, and my niece, Eden Haley Fuller. He Pride. That will be a moment I will take to the grave and beyond. This is where the ship came in. And many of those 2,000 troops, those Union troops, were men of African descent, the United States colored troops, telling people, hey, you don't work for nobody no more. And to be able to read that general order there, standing there with the sister standing completely quiet that you talked with subsequently, was a transformative moment. We were literally there a year ago. And then we did our session in class, made it back to Atlanta. But thinking about this in the context of 160th anniversary and observance of Juneteenth, we know that Juneteenth wasn't observed June 19th, 1865, but the following year, June 19th, 1866, when Africans began that conversation. They have continued it in an unbroken manner. So 6 years later, from June 1866, the Reverend John Henry Yates, Jack Yates, Jack Yates High School is Roland Martin's alma mater. Debbie Allen, Felicia Allen, Felicia Rashad now. That's their alma mater, Jack Yates. There are other great schools, Phyllis Wheatley and others in Houston, but I'm just mentioning Jack Yates at this moment. But because Yates and 3 other men of African descent put together money and got community money from the women and men and bought the property that is still Emancipation Park. We've talked about this many times, so I'm not going to get into it much, but we're at the 160th observance of Juneteenth. We're also entering the 2-week corridor between Juneteenth, which is the largest Black liberation ritual directly connected in the United States, contributing to those global rituals of Black self-determination, the rites of August, usually held in the Caribbean, marking their emancipation, the rites in Latin America, the rites in Africa, the Independence Days of Africa. All of these rites are cousins of Juneteenth, the big sister of Juneteenth, Watch Night, marking December 31st, 1862, which emptied into January 1st, 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation and executive order signed by Abraham Lincoln went into effect, and Africans prayed in the new year in places where they were not in cap, places like Philadelphia churches and other places. And they got up off their knees, got them guns, and went and slit some Confederate throats. Such a lovely thought. No, I don't apologize. I'm a timekeeper. You understand? You were not your friend in a moment like that. If you cringe, it's okay. Do it with a smile. But in the process, then, Juneteenth is part of a larger universe of African liberation rituals, self-determinating rituals. We are self-determining now. This is our ground. We stand on our ground. And so June 19th, 1866 empties into that. And so we're in that corridor, that 15-day corridor between June 19th and July 4th in the United States of America. This country, the United States of America's nativist ritual, July 4th. And please understand that when people say, what is Juneteenth to July 4th? Well, I put it this way. I said this actually, did a 5-minute segment with ABC. Alex Pressure, brother from Atlanta, was on the weekend anchor desk. And so they asked me to do something on Juneteenth, just real quick. I said, oh, sure, no problem. So yesterday evening, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. I don't know. But said, in many ways, the Confederacy in the United States was to African people in Texas and who have experienced captivity, and African people everywhere in the United States. What is Juneteenth to July 4th? Well, if England was the English colonies, the British colonies, the United States, if that was their enemy in July 4th, the Confederacy was our England in Juneteenth. We're against you. As Muhammad Ali would say, you my opposer. So how you going to fit Juneteenth and July 4th when July 4th is you against the British and Juneteenth is us against you? I'm sure so many of y'all watched the Big Boy Birthday Bash brawl on the same lawn of the East Wing of the White House, where 2 years ago, our sister Opal Lee stood at the podium. Do you remember? Stood at the podium. I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so we're in this ritual corridor now. We got this 2-week corridor between Juneteenth and July 4th. in a country that's entangled in a war of choice. This 14-point memorandum of understanding ain't worth the paper it's written on if people keep dying. Beat the international killer said, I'm going to keep killing. I'm going to keep killing. Then all of a sudden he changed his tune in the last 24 hours. Oh, I'm not going to keep killing, but I'm going to keep my soldiers over there. Yeah, you pouting because somebody might yank them dollars out your pocket. Them U.S. tax dollars, our money. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it's supposed to be an end to the war. It ain't no end to the war. As Gore Vidal wrote in a little book of essays years ago, perpetual war for perpetual peace. In other words, there ain't no time, it ain't no war somewhere in the world. This is the legacy of European colonialism. But we're entangled in this war of choice. And we saw that gauche, white nationalist lawn brawl fest on the White House lawn. We saw the opening of the Obama Presidential Center on Juneteenth. The continuing celebrations and tensions surrounding the World Cup in Mexico, Canada, United States. The Africans can't come in. You can come in, but you can't come in. You Iran people, y'all can play in the U.S., but you got to sleep in Mexico. All this damn nativism, all this white-faced nativism, not just the United States, although it is the leader, Canada too. Letting people come in, letting people come out. The brother, one of the great referees in the game of football, soccer, Somali, not allowed to come into the United States. So the Canadians said, well, you can referee up here. Nah, you got to go training in Miami. So that means you can't. FIFA, your criminal enterprise. We've already talked about that. We're not going to get into that anymore. But all that taking place. And then, of course, the multinational, as John Clark would say, New York is not a city. It's a multinational place. It's a multi-ethnic nation on full display at City Hall this week as the New York Knicks won a basketball championship, which was about so much more than the basketball championship symbolically as the Ugandan-born mayor, Muslim mayor of New York City, Zoran Kwame, as in Nkrumah, Mamdani, who his daddy and mama named him for, Nkrumah, middle name. Zoran Mamdani gave a hell of a speech that was about basketball. He name-checked damn near everybody's played on the New York Knicks in the last 60 years, but he also tied it to the city. It's not just a victory for the city of New York, it's a victory as the city of New York. They didn't just win for New York, they won as New Yorkers. And then you see the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Here's Jose Alvarado and them cats on the floats. Man, you can't beat that. And James Dolan sitting there stewing. They probably would have finished the NBA championship undefeated, except the white nationalist James Dolan invited his nasty white nationalist friend getting ready for his big boy birthday bash, the lawn brawl. Bozo showed up and put the bad juju on the Knicks, but then the woo came from Shaolin Land and other parts of the world and took the juju off and put the good juju on. You know that juju. You know about that juju that the Congolese brought here on the plane, tied Portugal. The juju that the Ghanaians brought here and the Haitians brought here, although Haiti didn't help them last night versus Brazil, 3-0. But again, black on black. And I ain't mad. I'm going to get me one of them Haiti jerseys with the Battle of Vertier on the side. That's the jersey that FIFA banned, saying it was too political. But our Battle of Vertier, y'all know that's another celebration ritual coming out of Haiti. I was blessed one year to go to the Haitian embassy. I want to say it was 2017, if memory serves me correctly, and offer some remarks here in D.C. at the Haitian embassy on the Battle of Vertier. So, passe. What's going on, y'all? All right, Haiti. So, yeah, that juju in New York was strong. And to see all that happen in the same week, you know, these Emancipation Day rituals, which is what Juneteenth used to be called, Day of Jubilee, Emancipation Day, now we call it Juneteenth, and that's just fine. As all that's taking place, it becomes an opportunity, this unique convergence of ritual moments, of celebrations, to raise these questions of governance, of cultural meaning making, and movement and memory. You know, let me take these out. I think it may be that they dying. So if they are, just take these out and then come back. And we are back. Okay, very good. So I'll let those charge for a moment. So it's important to have that conversation and have these conversations of governance, cultural meaning making, movement and memory, what we've been talking about today under the title celebration, because we're in the 2-week quarter now, and I promise you next week next week and the week after, we're going to really use this semi-quincentennial, as I said, from January, and I said in February, Black History Month. We're going to use it to really dig a little deeper in terms of this question of the context of the U.S. social structure, because we're at the brink of renegotiations now, and it can't be hidden anymore. It's very interesting and it was intriguing to watch the people at the Obama Presidential Center. And they streamed the whole thing in terms of the ritual. And now to see social media as people are posting pictures of who was there and they were there, and it's great. And it makes me think about questions of class, questions of celebrity, questions of politics. As someone who is in the line of timekeepers, it's my responsibility. Now, I don't have any illusions about my interpretive ability being any better or any worse than anyone else, nor do I have any illusions about the fact that I spent my entire adult life in study and in conversation, and most important, in listening, as John Clark told Guy Rogers McLean and Mary Lefkowitz and Uchis Lee and a bunch of other people when they had this big debate about Black Athena many years ago there in New York. And John Clark, as they were trying to come after him about some interpretations of history, he said, I've spent my entire adult life studying this subject. I did not come here to debate anybody. John Clark then said the line that many people repeat, but they don't repeat the two lines I just said. Because of that, those decades of study that goes back to the 1930s, and because that then equips me to have a different kind of conversation and be in dialogue to come to some consensus with people who have studied like that or close to that, he says, I only debate my equals, all others I teach. Now, I wouldn't say that. Not at this stage in my life, but nor would I shrink from the fact that if you can't tell time, I'm not going to get into a debate with you as whether it's 4 o'clock or 5 or 6 o'clock or midnight, because you can't tell time. You have the ability, the innate ability, but not the developed capacity, and that's just fine. We can all learn how to tell time. And so watching the events, I'm looking at it with a different lens than everybody else, just like everybody else is looking at it a different lens than I am. But I'm also looking at it informed by much of the other things that are going on around there, factual event-based, And so my responsibility, it seems, if I'm going to be part of that genealogy, is to at least bear witness to what I know to be factually accurate, whether it's true or not. Well, that becomes a conversation that we have to have. But the more facts we have, as Dr. Clark said, I spent my whole life in pursuit of more information, the better we can develop our capacity to decide what we want to do with that information. And so this unique convergence over this last week, entering into this 2-week corridor, raises these questions of governance and cultural meaning making and movement and memory in the context of a U.S. social structure that is on the verge of being renegotiated, not just internally, but externally. These ritual moments, these celebrations are public narratives that reveal values. Different values, different people, but they do reveal them. Again, these questions of presidential centers that have all the archives in them, that's where scholars come, and anybody who can develop the capacity to read and think can come and study and say, okay, LBJ, when he signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, here's what's in the book. But I found a letter where, he really didn't like Black people, or he really didn't like Martin Luther King, or it shouldn't matter whether he liked either one of them. When this person came in and said, look at this letter, that's archival research. And it's very valuable because it gives us some more insight. There are no papers in the Barack Obama Presidential Center. If you want to do that kind of research, you're not going to send for a folder, and they're going to take it to a room. You're not going to read it. You can pull up the same digital information sitting on the south side of Chicago on Stony Island at the Barack Obama Presidential Center. You can pull the same information up in terms of Obama's archives that I could pull up right here, or you could pull up wherever you are right now, because the physical papers are in Maryland. That's a choice. What is also a choice is the narrative choices to create a beautiful place with all these things in it that will allow you to project yourself into wherever you need to find yourself, a Rorschach test, of course, and then to have as the aspiration a more perfect union. To have in that building, ensconced in the architecture, not outside, but inside, words from his Philadelphia speech. I was standing outside the National Constitution Center on the day that Barack Obama gave his Toward a More Perfect Union speech, where he paired Jeremiah Wright and his grandmother as people from a previous generation one older white woman who had some racial tendencies that weren't beneficial to African people, another a man who's given his whole life to the liberation of African people and to the recognition of our common humanity, as if them two people were part of the same narrative. No, I was there. Couldn't get in, but I was outside as buses of school children, mostly white, were bussed in from different places, Philadelphia suburbs mostly, or many of them. Now I won't say most because I don't have a quantitative accounting, but I know what I saw, and I know what appeared later in the film, and I know what has been put in the presidential center. There's not an archive, but a center, which means a narrative choice. So Reverend Wright, you know we love you. And we know that you're not going to be narrated in that building in any way that would allow, like an archive where you can go through and look at all the stuff. 20 years the man spent in Trinity United Church of Christ. I know y'all think that I'm against Obama. I'm not against Barack Obama. I am a timekeeper. If you don't like it, get mad. You don't cuss the sun because it went down at 6:08. We're in the solstice now, longest days of the year right now. So people happy. Do you curse the sun on the solstice, the winter solstice, or do you just say, well, let me adjust? So don't be mad at me. As John Clark, you say, don't get mad, get smart. You can celebrate. We should celebrate. We should mark and acknowledge, but we should also never forget what time it is or where we are in the map of human geography. And what I'm saying is that these centers, whether it be Obama, whether it be George Bush, whether it be Clinton, whether it's going to be Donald Trump, well, he's going to put a hotel on his, because if you think that Obama going to raise private money for a center, you don't think Trump going to do the same thing? Of course he is. He's already started doing it. And that's going to be a monstrosity. And the story they're telling there is going to make your head explode if you subscribe to those kind of lies, but it's not necessary. The point that was being raised in the article that I was telling you about in the Atlantic is that once you have untethered from a national narrative to put whatever narrative you want in place, that has the potential of weakening the fabric of the nation. I read that and started laughing because I don't care. That's fine. Because I know this ain't a nation. It's a country, it's a state with many different nations in it. I told the dude, hey, I got a lot in that 5 minutes, come to think of it. I said, yeah, it's a state with many nations in it. New York, conversely, interestingly enough, I think in many ways, not completely, but in many ways, is a nation with many different nations in it. Knicks nation is very powerful. So even when the white nationalist James Dolan, following Mayor Mamdani, says at the rally, at the parade, at the ceremony, I don't need to make a speech. It doesn't matter whether you make a speech or not, you clown. Nobody cares. Everybody wants you to sell the team except white nationalists and billionaires. Whether you sell it or not. In some ways, it's funny when they lost game 3, I was thinking, I didn't say it on the radio or anywhere else. I was just thinking to myself, I would have said it if I thought about it at the moment. In the mornings, I would have said, in some ways, the Knicks should treat the rest of this series like, remember that movie Major League, where they all hated the owner? And so they started winning in part to spite the owner, because the owner wanted to tank so she could sell the team. And so they went on the run, Wesley Snipes and, all them kind of Charlie Sheen and all of them. I'm thinking, in some ways, I think that might have been even the ethos of the New York Knickerbockers. In other words, we don't like Dolan. We do what we have to do. We ain't winning to spite him. We winning in spite of him. And so in some ways, New York City is more of a nation than the United States of America is a nation, because people come from all over the known world and become New Yorkers. So that a group from the whitest borough, in many ways, Staten Island, renamed their part of it Shaolin Land. Huh? Moms bounced on the old man, and then we moved to Shaolin Land. So the Wu comes and lifts all that juju that they tried to put in there from a man who wouldn't be caught dead in New York City, who told y'all he could kill somebody, shoot him in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and still not lose any votes. Yeah, but them white nationalists may start peeling off you, ain't they, bozo? My point is this, which is why you had to sign that, whatever that agreement is, that memorandum of understanding, because the price is getting too high. You need them white nationalist votes, which you may have already ruined yourself, my friend. In this process, then, of thinking about this, all these ritual moments are public narratives, and they reveal various values while often threatening to flatten looming realities. Because you can have a big boy birthday bash, a gauche brawl on the lawn where Opal Lee was a couple of years ago, and think that you represent the United States of America. You absolutely do represent white nationalists. You can have a 4th of July
ritual here, which you will. And for part of them time, I'm going to go bear witness because July 4th falls on a Saturday. I'm going to go bear witness because I want to see what y'all doing down here. Because again, as a timekeeper, it's part of my responsibility that I have taken on is to bear witness. So some people ain't got to bear witness. I'm gonna go look. The space between Juneteenth and July 4th in the United States of America allows us to also consider spaces between facts and wishes, between remembrances and aspirations. I'm looking at George Bush sitting up there who has a real friendship with the Obamas. But guess what? President of the United States of America, not your friend or mine. My father outlived the people who died on September the 11th, 2001 by a few weeks. He made transition later on that month. Who would have known, as my father was battling the cancer, that he would outlive the people who went to work at the World Trade Center? Nobody. Or everybody, depending on what time you keep it. And I'm saying that George W. Bush was sitting there, clueless, reading books to children when the towers got hit and the Pentagon got hit and that plane went down in Pennsylvania. He said, oh, what? Dick Cheney sprung into action. Dick Cheney forever, say the oligarchs and the white nationalists. My point is that in that process, you have to understand that there's a distance between facts and wishes, between remembrances and aspirations, and that we got stuck with a bill because of the Obama presidency that we didn't get everything we thought we were going to get. But that ain't Barack Obama's fault. I do not blame him. I don't blame his wife, his children. No, that is not his fault. That's our fault. We're the ones projecting things onto a person who did the best he could with what he had. Another John Clark quote. He should have done, I'm not going to argue with that. He's president of the United States. So we have to understand that. This time last year, as I said, we were in Galveston. And, it occurred to me, Prof, that this is the Juneteenth, in terms of a ritual celebration moment involving African people. This is the most extensive ritual moment that we have had discussions on here in this so important and violet space. The first time we talked about Juneteenth and any extension, and I'm saying this because, I'm not getting into the history of Juneteenth today because we have talked about it 5 times extensively, and then other times kind of obliquely. So those of you who are in Knarrative and Nubia is right there. You got the compendium all right there. They're all in one video. If you are on YouTube, if you're watching this, or you're listening to the podcast, or you're doing it, I'm going to give you the numbers very quickly. Put my timer on. I'm not going to spend much time on this because you can call. Some of these go for an hour. Some of them go for 2 hours. Some of them go for 2.5 hours. The first time we talked about Juneteenth was session 13. What is Juneteenth? You're going to get all the books you want, all the bibliography, all the stuff you want. The next time we talked about it extensively was session 67. Juneteenth is a federal holiday. Now what? That was the session that came in the wake of 2021 when, because Ajwa Asamoah, my sister, said, I'm going down to the White House to see this bill signed. You want to come? I said, hell yeah, I'm coming. Put on some African clothes, some of my best stuff. In fact, I put on a 2-piece that my man, retired dean of Howard University College of Arts and Sciences, Segun Badageshin, great Yoruba scholar, brought back from Nigeria for me years ago. And so I put that on. So I'm coming down here to bear witness as we going into the White House. Who do we run into but Opal Lee and her granddaughter? So we walk in with her. We were her. And as we go in with her, who stops us in the foyer? It's be the same one that that Trump done messed up with all that garish gold. We headed to the spot. And who says, oh, Miss Lee? Simone Sanders, because she was still working at the White House, and her boss, Kamala Harris. Before we even got to the room. And we talked about it. So if you want to go see all that, session 67. And that's where I talk about the fact that Juneteenth was the day in 1968, the last day of the Poor People's Campaign, and Coretta Scott King standing at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial above a reflecting pool that is now green with algae and the blue coating that Bozo paid $13 million, $16 million of your money to a buddy who was a campaign contributor who lives next to him in Mar-a-Lago. He got your money. Y'all letting this, I don't give a damn. It ain't going to be in the Trump presidential center. They're going to talk about how great the stuff was. Yeah. Coretta Scott King stood above that same reflecting pool that her husband had stood about 5 years earlier, 5 years, almost 5 years, August 63 to June 68, June 19th, 1968, where she stood at the last day of the Poor People's Campaign on Juneteenth, recognizing it and saying, yesterday, June 18th, was the 15th anniversary of my marriage to Martin Luther King. Our wedding anniversary was yesterday. MLK and Coretta Scott King got married on June 18th, what was, I guess it would be 68, so 58, 57, 56, 55, 56. She said, it's our 15th wedding anniversary yesterday. And I'm here to talk about what my husband wanted, what we must want. And she starts talking about the poor and healthcare. And she starts talking about housing and education. This is the core of her message. And it was delivered on Juneteenth, 1968, with a very deliberate purpose. We talked about that in 67. So y'all can go look at all that. We talked about Al Edwards, the great legislator out of Texas, who fought for years to make Juneteenth a national state holiday in Texas, and did so in 1980. 43 states had already recognized it in one way or the other, because African people recognized it before anybody said that we needed to recognize it. So I talk about what it was like to be in that room on that day. The following year, 119, go look up In Class with Carr 119. Do it in YouTube. You'll get it right quick. Boom. It'll be on Professor Hunter on the YouTube channel, Karen Hunter Show, or it'll be on Knarrative that it was created subsequently. You have it there, and you can look at Juneteenth through African history. We link it to with all the books. So yeah, what shall I read on Juneteenth? It's all there. A couple of hours. Understand that. Very important to understand. We talk about that. That was the year of the People's Assembly here in Washington, D.C. Our good brother, Reverend Dr. William Barber, and Sister Liz Theo Harris, the Poor People's Campaign, Reverend Theo Harris, bringing the people together. I went down there. I was on the mall. We were broadcasting with WPFW. Remember, Prof? We talked about that during the session. All of this continuing. And by the way, shout out to Cliff Albright, who came on Urban View Mornings this week, and also Latasha Brown, who came on Urban View Mornings with Shauna. Of course, we just passed the birthday of Joe Madison, and my good brother David Canton, professor at the University of Florida, who co-wrote with Joe his memoir Radioactive. All proceeds from the sales of Radioactive will go to continue Joe Madison's work. It's very important to please understand those donations would do that. And so Tasha came on with Shauna, and then Cliff came on with Lamont and I. So shout out to Cliff Albright and April Albright, his partner, sister, who they are in Galveston, where we were last year. Of course, on Juneteenth, after we did our ritual, we went over to Reedy Chapel AME because the former president of the United States, Joe Biden, was speaking there. And Karen actually got into the foyer. We were just kind of looking around with the Secret Service sweeping around. We was out there. It's a beautiful thing. Shout out to everybody at Reedy Chapel. Thanks for your hospitality there. And also shout out to the good brother Anthony Griffin, who wrote the book The Water Cries, a brilliant history of not only Juneteenth, but the history of the people in Galveston. And spent a couple of hours with him at his law office, just sitting with him. And we all sat there and talked and had a great time. A great interview this week on Rethinking Freedom. Aya Nelly interviewed him, Anthony Griffin. So if you want to know about that book, all that stuff we talked about in session 119. And then a year later in session 171, Juneteenth now, talking about Juneteenth, under this subject heading, what is Juneteenth to the Negro? Kind of a play, because July 5th was the date that African people during our captivity would critique July 4th. So in many ways, it ain't between Juneteenth and July 4th. It's Juneteenth and July 5th. I'm going to think about that more for next week. Fred Douglass would give speeches on July 5th. That's when he gives the famous "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" speech, which we will talk about too again. But we talked about it extensively in 171. What is Juneteenth to the Negro? That was the year that Odge roped us to get all together again. And we went down, Mario Valethia, who else went? Angie Porter went down there with us. Erica Asakoye went down there with us. A bunch of people down there. Larry was there. The Urban View crew were there. We were there on that same patch of grass. They had the big boy birthday bash, ghost wrestling slap tickle fight. The same patch of grass. We stand there and watched Opal Lee. This thing having been created as a federal holiday, it's always been a national holiday for us. And when I say that, as I said in session 171, I'm gonna say it here now, but Mother Opal Lee stood there and said, oh man, she said, we are the most powerful country in the whole United States. Now, she probably meant we're the most powerful country in the world, but I like what she said, because she said we're the most powerful. Amiri Baraka said in the United States, in America, Black is a country. So it may have been a slip in her mind, but ancestrally, it was chef's kiss. It's like she talking to Black people. I know she meant everybody old, but what she said is different. She said, we are the most powerful country in the United States. If you go back to 171, you'll see before Prophet and I started talking, we played that clip from the beginning. Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is standing there next to her at the podium, and she's talking to all of us. Between where Opal Lee was standing and where we were standing, now there's a big boy wrestling match cage that the boy say he gonna keep. Both of them tore y'all country up. I couldn't laugh any harder as a timekeeper. My point is this. She stood there and said, we are the most powerful country in the United States. And then she said, and we must get together and get rid of the disparities, the joblessness and the homelessness and the health care that some people can get and others can't. Mother Opal Lee then said, and climate change that we're responsible for. And then she ended and dropped the mic by walking away after she said the sentence. And if we don't get it together, we're going to hell in a handbasket. I'm sorry. She said, if we don't get it together, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. Turned and walked away. And Vice President Harris came to the podium and said, and with that, everybody started laughing. Come on, y'all. That was yesterday. The big boy birthday bash, wrestling, slap, tickle fight on the White House lawn is temporary. Keep the time. That was a couple of ticks on the clock. It's going to go. That same building that he done tore down the East Wing wasn't no East Wing when the British burned it, and some Africans probably showed them how to help it. Wasn't no East Wing when Paul Jennings told him to roll up that picture of George Washington that Gilbert Stewart had painted and get it out of there and bring Dolly Madison with you. It wasn't no East or West Wing. It's just a building. Just like what Barack Obama had built. It's just a building. You can tear a building down, but you can't erase a memory. Even if you lose your physical archives, if you rebuild your memory mouth to ear, life to life, you can always put it back down on paper, but it does require intervening and restoring your long view memory. That's why the Water Cries is so important. So all these new books on Juneteenth that have come out since the last time we had the conversation. And by the way, if you come forward another year, 223 and 224, Juneteenth sandwiched between us going to Wilberforce, Charles Young. We talked about that. In fact, I was moving books around, and the book I was looking for when we talked about Charles Young, whose archive is at Wilberforce, I don't think I brought it over here right now, but I'm going to talk about it in the next couple of weeks because we are on the Juneteenth arc in the corridor now. I thought I brought it over here, but that's okay because when I was moving books around, I thought, here it is. Yeah, this is a reprint. This is the book that I told you all in session 223 that Charles Young had written called Military Morale of Nations and Races by Charles Young. And in this book, he's got a chapter where he talks about this in the context of global warfare. But look at this chapter 4. After he talks about America, Asia, he got Australia and Africa. And when he writes about Africa, it's very powerful. This is a book on warfare and military morale of nations and races. This is Charles Young, the soldier, Charles Young, the intellectual. And so we're going to talk about this because Young fits squarely in this liminal space between Juneteenth and July 4th or 5th, depending on how you want to talk about it. But in that process, we have to understand that the work of our people is to convene our entire memory so that we can position ourselves to best intervene wherever we need to intervene to make the world a better place. That was also between sessions 223 and 224, where we talked about how Juneteenth fits in these larger valences of liberation struggles. This is still, in my mind, the best book on the subject. William Wiggins, Oh Freedom, Afro-American Emancipation Celebrations. Just a hardback. And I think when we talked about it, I showed y'all this is the paperback. Oh Freedom, Afro-American Emancipation Celebration. Same book. A couple of weeks ago, I picked this up. Blair Kelly has put together a nice coffee table book on Black freedom, a visual history of Juneteenth. And it talks about some of these other celebrations as well, called Black Freedom, a visual history of Juneteenth and Emancipation Days. It's a nice book as a point of entry. When you want to get into the larger context, this is the book to get. Still, Oh Freedom. And it was funny because as I was reading this, first thing I did was go to the bibliography and see if Wiggins is mentioned, and Wiggins is not mentioned. And I'm like, see, that's why I'll be like, hold on, let me, because I already looked and so I already know. But I'm like, but it's got great pictures. It's got fantastic, photographs and some, decent narrative and some good kind of his Emancipation Proclamation, over there. So, I mean, it's a good book for, getting visual and kind of talking about some of the other places, Emancipation Days in places like Raleigh, North Carolina, and in South Carolina. And it's even got a piece devoted to Opal Lee. So it's a very important, they complement each other. But this one right here, William Wiggins traveled throughout the United States South, as we talked about. I'm not going to talk about it much more here. And looking at my time, and I want to he went through all these states talking with people who had this in June. He went through all these states to talk with people who had various celebrations, and he recorded them. All them people ancestors now. Well, I wouldn't say all of them, but mostly, Bloomington, Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, Little Rock, Arkansas, Texarkana, Rockdale, and Houston, Texas. He went through all of these. He said, Deja Vu rode with us on this leg of our trip. My parents had taught at nearby Prairie View A&M College in the late 1930s. Glimpses of my Texas childhood flashed back to me as I viewed the roadside melon stands on the outskirts of such area towns as Cypress and Hockley. He goes on. So really, you read this book, then when you pick up this book and kind of go through it, you'll get a kind of real US-based context for celebrations. And then you do stuff like my man Jeffrey Kerr's book, Rights of August 4th. Of course, the great Gerald Horne, The Counter-Revolution of 1836, Texas Slavery and the Jim Crow Roots, Texas Slavery and Jim Crow and the Roots of U.S. Fascism, which he really puts Juneteenth in a hemispheric context in terms of what happened in Mexico. All of that we talked about, with the exception of Blair Kelly's book, which wasn't out by then, in session 223 and 224, where Willie Mays had made transition during this same period. All-Star Game coming up, by the way. So we've talked about this many times. Session 276, Juneteenth and the Unyielding Work of Liberation. So 5 times, 6 or 7, but really 5 core times. We've gone through Juneteenth extensively. Go back and look at those numbers one final time for folks in the barbershop who are writing. A shout out to the brothers I met this week who said they put this on in the barbershop. Hey, I love y'all. So session 13, session 67, session 119, 119, session 171, sessions 223 and 224, and sessions 276, and now session 328. This is one of the ones that, as I'm writing and thinking and putting these things together for a different form to reiterate and put the floor under, really is the one that we have done the most consistently, because it is the one that falls the closest as a ritual to where we started, with the exception of Blackest History Month in some ways, but we'll get there. So again, the idea then of Texas as a metaphor is important, because Texas in many ways has all the contradictions, all the contestations, all the convergences that this criminal enterprise represent. And these possibilities, these visions have to be rooted in memory. It's very important to understand. There is no national narrative in the United States of America. People want to believe it, but it's not true. If nothing else, if you watch that New York Knicks parade, what you'll see is that's as close to a nation as you're going to get. A nation has common language, common identity, common memory, common context. So if you're going to talk about Walt Clyde Frazier and Patrick Ewing, you're going to talk about John Starks and Dick the Skull Barnett, Tennessee A&I, Tennessee State, shout out. You're going to talk about those famous Knicks and bring them forward, the Allen Houston, all them people that Mayor Mamdani name check as Jimmy Dolan seethed behind him. Then you can talk about maybe coming up with a nation that is, as Benedict Anderson has written, as what's the guy I was just reading? Anthony D. Smith. I was rereading. Nations are imagined communities. The United States of America is a white nationalist settler colony with a lot of different nations in it. And the only thing that white nationalists will accept in a country is their identity impressed in your mind. They're going to make you into capital assets to labor for their vision of a country. But they can't do it. They can't even do it if you subscribe to that, because there's too much of who we are that remains in the lingering echo. That's what you saw sitting out there at that beautiful Barack Obama and Michelle Obama Presidential Center. It cannot be pressed into a narrative where it simply won't work. So what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks, on the 27th, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America is meeting here at Howard Law School. The 26th through the 28th of June, I'm going to be over there with them. But next Saturday, we'll continue in this conversation. And then July 4th, we'll figure that out, because that's where we're going to really kind of bring it in for a landing and put something in place for us to really chew on the rest of this criminal enterprise year. The U.S. is still very segregated. I didn't see mixed crowds at events. I don't see mixed crowds at a lot of events, these Juneteenth events. I'm going to a couple of today. Shout out to Ayana Muhammad. Ayana, who is the director of the National Hip Hop Museum. They'll be inducting Brand Nubian, One for All, Brand Nubian here in D.C. this afternoon. If you're around Walter Reed Park, there's a free event. Y'all should come. Tonight at Sankofa, they're showing a film because this is the 50th anniversary of Soweto. I actually bought this book in South Africa. Soweto, 16 June 1976. We talked about Soweto many times as well. This is eyewitness accounts, interviews with people. That is the Southwest townships, Soweto, where these Europeans tried to kill these Black children. These are interviews with 25 of them who were there that day. You can see some of them. Yeah, I picked this book up. Maybe not the last time I was in South Africa, but yeah, here they are. So I'd encourage people to read about Soweto. These African children were like, you're not going to make us learn Afrikaans. We're going to fight back. And the police shot them. Hector Peterson, the first to die in the conflict. And so what they did 25 years later is talk with a number of the young people who were young people then, teenagers, and then who gave their accounts. Maybe we'll talk more about this next week. And so, you know, we have to understand that this is where we are in a social structure where the normalization of Juneteenth has occurred. And this is very interesting. This is why I'm wearing my Homestead Grays joint. Got this on Tuesday. Where were we down there? Tuesday. I hadn't been to the Washington Nationals game or to the stadium or in that neighborhood since they fired Dusty Baker. Oh, racist. They got rid of Dusty. And by the way, Dusty Baker's memoir is out. If you know a way, I'm trying to talk with Dusty Baker. I am determined to talk with Dusty Baker. I thought I had it here. I've been carrying it around, reading it bit by bit. And y'all know that I might keep looking for it until I find it. But I don't think, yeah, it's in my bag. It's in the other room. Yeah, Dusty Baker's memoir is out. I'm trying to talk to Johnny B. Baker because I got some questions for him. I should have caught him when he was here with the Nets, and I had a chance to go down there, but I was out of town and I couldn't get down there. But I'm gonna talk to Dusty Baker before it's over. Yeah, I'm just telling y'all. So yeah, I'm serious. At any rate, I hadn't been down there since they got rid of him because and then won the World Series the next year with his team. So to the learners and all them, y'all can go to hell. I told people who work for the Nationals that one day I was at something at the National Museum. Jackie Robinson, when they had his Jack Roselle Robinson, his jersey at the National Museum, some people from the Nats came up and said, "Oh yeah, you should come to Nats games." I said, "I come to Nats games all the time, but I ain't coming down there no more because y'all got rid of Dusty Baker." And they was like, yeah. Well, I got pushed and cajoled. You should go down. Okay, fine. Because they gave out 20,000 of these Homestead Grays jerseys. Shout out to my man Sean Gibson, the great grandson of the great Josh Gibson, who played for the Homestead Grays, of course, in the stadium, Griffith Stadium, where Howard University Hospital is now. We talked about Sean in class too. If you want to talk about his foundation, the Gibson Foundation, we're going to be talking with him tomorrow, next week. I talked with him. I said, we want to talk. Yeah, I said, I came back down there, brother. I wasn't coming. I saw Sean earlier this summer. He brought a bunch of his students and down to Howard to a campus tour and then go to the African American Museum. And he said he was coming back into town. So I was like, all right, I'll go. Because I get a Grays jersey and I get to see Sean. But I ain't tell Sean I was coming. So I texted him later with a picture of him on the Jumbotron waving with all these little children around carrying Negro League banners. I said, yeah, I didn't want to tell you, man, because we would have been up there. You'd have had me up in there eating olives and kikiing. No, I sit up in the nosebleed seats and was sitting up there watching the game. It was a beautiful time. Had a time out. So at any rate, it was quite striking because, walking around, we started saying, first of all, it's mostly, I think almost all Black people work at the Nat Stadium, at the restaurants and selling the food and security and going all through. It's Black people. A lot of elders saw people who were here with us. Again, it was beautiful to see them. But when you give out 20,000 Homestead Grays jerseys, and I looked it up went down there and said, okay, it averaged between 14 and 15,000 people a game so far this year at the Nat Stadium. The announced crowd was 25,000 something. So 10,000 more people came. I guarantee you that was because of the jerseys. And I guarantee you that it was because a lot of Black people went, saw a lot of Black kids, a lot of Black elders, apparently some Black baseball teams. People came down, but then people got the jerseys. And when they got the jerseys, they didn't keep the jerseys in the packaging. They took the jerseys out and started wearing them. So I want y'all to imagine this. You got 20,000 people, mostly white, but not exclusively white, and plenty of Black people and other non-whites there. Almost all of them wearing Homestead Grays jerseys. I don't care that they don't know who the Homestead Grays are. I don't care if they don't know Buck Leonard. I don't care if they don't know Cool Papa Bell or the great Josh Gibson. I don't care if they don't know that this was one of the marquee teams of the Negro Leagues that won the Black World Series many times. I don't care. Just that visual, like the Obama Presidential Center, gives you a sense of the possible that doesn't yet conform with reality, but gives you a moment to consider. So as we're thinking about this, people say that's integration. No, as Sterling Brown said, if I'm going to be integrated in a society, I want to come in as an integer, a whole number. In other words, at the root of integration is the integer, and I'm going to be an integer. You're not bringing me in as a figment of your imagination. I'm not coming in talking about democracy. I'm not coming in talking about getting my ass beat on the Edmund Pettus Bridge as if I was aspiring to be Thomas Jefferson or some damn body or John Locke or Rousseau, or you tell me which one you want to talk to. Come on Monday night and we'll talk about it in office hours. But no, I'm coming in as who I am. Grits and pork and beans and whatever else, and more importantly, tying all that stuff I experienced directly to the long memory of the things that I must recover in order to come in as a whole person. You got to look at the whole people. Start with the common people. Start with where we are right now, but connect it to the long memory. We do that, we'll be fine. So we'll continue this conversation next week.
Yes. Well, thank you. No, thank you for today. I mean, it's a lot. I just want to encourage people to sit sometimes. The process of learning is some of it is sitting in it and coming back to it. I was talking with Roderick Morrow. We talked yesterday about Is God Is, and he said, he does reviews of movies, and he said, when he left the theater, he decided not to immediately come and talk about it, because it was a lot that he had to process. And he's glad that he didn't just open his mic, because people just turn on their cameras and they open their mics. Most knowledge or most things have to be digested, including food. Like we have to digest food. So we don't just eat and then poop. It's got to go through its channels, right? We have to master, anyway. So I just want to, as people are coming in, new people are coming in, I just want to encourage everyone that knowledge takes time. Let it sit in your spirit for a minute and process. And go back to all of the lessons previously. And, we built the archive for a reason. Like, go back and sit with it.
Yeah, that's critical, Prof. We did build it for a reason. And when every conversation we have is adding to the archive. I'm glad you said that because that gave me a second. I didn't bring any. Let me show y'all these 3 books because I just picked these up. There are some sisters and brothers in DC down at Union Station. This is their group. It's called the HBCU News. It's right across. There's a bookstore in Union Station I've been going to. This recent. Put this up. They don't know I'm doing this because I don't be going places telling people, and now I realize I have to be quiet. Because once people hear my voice, they be like, is that Dr. Carr? Oh, no. So I've been coming in and out. I went in there. I got some HBCU stuff. They haven't been open long. It's called the HBCU News. They got a lot of HBCU stuff, and they got some books in there. I saw 3 books on Juneteenth that have come out very recently. This little book here, The History of Juneteenth, Notable Events for Young Readers. Arlisha Norwood does a lot of stuff like this. This book, The Juneteenth Alphabet. This is an interesting book. Andrea Pfeiffer. Pictures by Anna Latisse, I think. Yeah, Latisse. And then this book, Garrison Hayes, a nice little book. He goes through called A Kid's Book About Juneteenth. I'm only mentioning these because there's been a proliferation of books on Juneteenth. But to your point, Prof, every week, every minute of every hour, all the time we talk is accretive. That's how archive works. And this is, everything we talk about connects to what we've talked about before and extends it, complicates it, fleshes it. And in terms of bibliography, that's what we do. And that living archive is there. So thank you, Prof, because in that beat, it reminded me, oh, yeah, I did want to mention that. And to the sisters and brothers who run HBCU News, thanks, y'all, because I also stand in there and watch Black people discover it. So all these old Black people coming in and say, hey, and they start asking for their school. It's like, do you have anything from Norfolk? Yeah, we got some pennants. You got anything? And they start naming the little schools like Voorhees. I'm like, it just does your heart good because most of these Black people didn't go to those schools, but they may be from those places. So it's like, what you got in here for Savannah State? It's just like, okay. So I wish them well. It's never crowded. That's another reason I'm glad that you said that because it reminded me, Prof, to say something. Y'all should just buy them out because support those Black businesses anyway.
Yeah, we're always looking for the next new thing instead of immersing ourselves in all of the old things as you keep time.
We all keeping it.
Yes.
Yeah, we all keeping it. So, hey, all right, Monday night, y'all, we're doing part 2. Imagine communities and birthday party in Howard French in the Second Emancipation. And then part 3, we're starting chapter 23 and 24, New Africans, and keep on keeping on. So I'll see everybody Monday night. Wait, is this Sunyata's week? Or is it I think it's Lindsay. Let me look in today in Nubia. So we can see. But hey, look, that's great.
Wait. Yep. Sunday, Father's Day. I think it's open.
Okay, yeah, because it's Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. Yeah, because I think Sunyata, I think they may be in South Carolina. I forget what them Negroes are right now. Yeah. But anyway, so shout out to Sunyata because I definitely got some red drink in the cup coming to.
It's Sorrel. Her red drink is Sorrel.
Sorrel, right? It's Sorrel. It's definitely Sorrel. That's why I told the young boy yesterday at ABC. I got this red drink, Sorrel. He just started laughing. But yeah, y'all be careful out here because these festivals, everybody got stuff going on everywhere. So if you're in West Philly at the big Juneteenth celebration, whatever y'all doing, New York, Buffalo, New York, Milwaukee, Atlanta, y'all, or if you down there in Texas with Cliff and Tosh and April and them where we were last year, man, it was hot as hell. But I promise you, that was a watershed moment in my life, Prof. Thank you so much. We got to be in Galveston on Juneteenth.
I never know what's gonna happen, and I've been very obedient in the last couple of years, and it has opened up my world in a way. It's like I want to control everything, but I'm just like, I do a thing, I show up, and somehow it works out because we're together. So yeah.
Sam, and I heard you talking about Sam this week, or last week was Sam Collins. So thanks again, Sam. I know you're busy this weekend, brother, down there.
Oh my God.
Galveston.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too. And where we started.
Yes, ma'am.
I have Jennifer Hudson, Christina Aguilera, John Legend, Eddie Vedder, Bruce Springsteen, and Common. They're coming out with me. We're gonna do this thing. Are y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
I don't care where you are in the world. Roots is gonna be a part of this too. I don't care where you are in a part of this is a celebration. Because I knew, and we knew in the spirit, that positivity was going to win. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Are y'all ready? One, two.
Everybody put your
Keep on
take it under. I'm on stage with my man Stevie Wonder. This is how it is, Southside 87. On stage with Jennifer Hudson and John Legend. This is how it be in the center. Obama Center. It's colder than winter. So beautiful. So beautiful. What I can do, check it out, it's usual. Usual like common for me and you. This is the type of thing that we can do. Like you too, just like Bono. We came to rock here live in Chicago. Yo, it's like this, we got the dream. On stage with Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. Can it be things can get better? Thank God I'm here with Eddie Vedder. We get it Biden, and George Bush. This is how I do, yo, Operation Push. As I push on down, I'ma keep jamming. Respect to who? Fred Hampton, and of course, all my people here in Washington. You know how we do, we all equal. Saying the thing, this is like this Dr. King, we did it like this. Compton, we don't need no drama. Respect to Obama and Michelle. This is how we dwell. You can tell, check it out, never fail. This is like this when I come down, y'all. I can say, yo, we can stand tall. Yo, this is like this shot town. We gon' take you, Stevie, to higher ground.
Yes, sir.